Okay, now we're on to basically the part where we mount the boom to the helicopter itself. Now, as I was explaining before, I mounted the fiberless mounting carbon fiber mount, I guess you could call it, and we can't install the boom with that in the helicopter. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this very quickly again. I did this just to demonstrate what I would do if it was my build. I would put this on, I would put the fiberless system on this, and I would work on everything I need to work on, just because it's so much more convenient to work on a helicopter that is the mechanics only and not the whole thing. So I'm going to set this aside for a little bit here, and then we're going to work on putting the boom in the helicopter. We're going to look at bag 7-5, and in that bag we're going to have the last few things that we need to mount this boom onto the helicopter. 7-5. It's right here. We have a few bolts right here. Now, these are the bolts that were missing before for here, here, and here and here for the frame, to attach the frame to the plastic tray down below. And with these bolts, we should have 4 of them. And then basically, we're going to mount those bolts. We're not going to tighten them all the way. We're just going to install them, and we're going to put a little bit of Loctite, and we're going to leave them a little bit loose. Then we are also going to have a shorter bolt on that bag 7-5, and that shorter bolt right here with a tiny little piece of carbon fiber, we're going to stick that bolt through that piece of carbon fiber, and we're going to set it aside, and I'll show you what that's for later. So I'm going to go ahead and mount these 4 bolts onto the frame real quick here while I speed up the video. Okay, now it's time to install the boom. Again, these 4 bolts are loose, they're not tightened all the way. So we're going to go ahead and push down on the nylon nuts, and we're going to make sure that this aluminum piece down there is up against the bolts. You want to have that room in there to insert the boom. And we're going to go ahead and look through the boom to make sure the belt is straight. So I can't demonstrate that here on the video for obvious reasons. I don't have enough room on the camera frame. And then we're going to go ahead and insert the, we hypothetically built the carbon push rod. It was supposed to be done on the previous step, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to insert the tail push rod that's right here in through the boom. And when you do this, make sure that it goes in through the plastic piece that we installed, because that's your guide. It has to be inside of that plastic piece. And once it's installed, you're going to see it come out, obviously, the other side right through here. And there's an easy tip for mounting or clicking or inserting this ball link onto this ball. A lot of people that flew the pre-production ones thought that this was kind of complicated. Just take some needle nose pliers, very easy to do. Take some needle nose pliers and just take this the ball link and put it up against the ball, just like so. And then, as you can see, this plastic piece has a hollow area here, or a little hole in here. Just put one end of the needle nose pliers there, the other end of the pliers on the ball link, and then push. There. So it's not that hard. Now it's inside, and we got our tail push rod installed. And now we're going to go ahead and proceed to install this onto the helicopter. Once again, I'm going to double check that my tail belt is lined up. Look through the boom like so, with the light source behind it, and make sure the tail belt doesn't have any twists. Make sure your tail push rod is inside that guide, and everything looks good. I'm going to make sure that my tail belt stays straight, and I'm going to go ahead and insert the boom. just like so. And the boom slot in the boom will go in between the aluminum piece that's right there that I showed you, and the bolts. And then you're gonna push forward all the way until it stops. Okay, the boom is all the way in. Now, on there's a back here. It says back 10. On back 10, you have this socket tool right here. It's actually back 10-2. I'm going to take that. We're going to tighten these nylon bolts. Now, when you do this, do not over tighten them. Make sure they're tight. They need to be very snug. You can't strip them that easily, but you don't want to really overdo it. And also, when you tighten these, make sure that the inside of the nuts make up a square. So you have to line up the nuts perfectly. And I'm going to show it to you why. Just like that. So the knots are as squared off as they can possibly be. And the reason for that is because we're going to go ahead now, and you remember that little piece of carbon fiber, the square carbon fiber with the bolt. We're going to go ahead and put a little bit of Loctite on that bolt. And we're going to insert it right in between the two nuts. And what that does is that keeps the nuts from loosening up in flight. I've never had these nuts loosen up in flight, even on the big helicopters. I've had people ask me if I've ever seen that happen. I've never had it happen. And I've actually flown Goblins without. On the bigger Goblins, there's a much bigger safety lock system. On this, we're only using the little piece of carbon fiber, but even without using this, I've never had these nuts break loose. However, it's good practice to make sure that you have that in there. So that's done. Now I can tighten up all these bolts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten every single bolt frame I have. So I'm going to speed up the video. If you guys remember in the first few chapters when I was building the frames, I mentioned not to tighten all the bolts all the way, or actually very tight. Since everything is already assembled, this is the time to make sure everything's tightened. So I'm going to go through all the bolts on the frame and make sure they're all tight all the way. Okay, now that all these are tight, the next step is to insert the tail belt onto the front tail pulley. So I'm going to look through the boom again, and I'm going to make sure that the tail belt is straight inside the boom. And I'm going to go ahead and twist the belt in the right direction and run it through the front tail pulley. So as you're looking at the helicopter from the front, if you're looking from front to back, you want to turn the tail belts like this. You want to turn it clockwise, 90 degrees. So, and the way to verify is when you turn the head clockwise, as seen from above, the tail has to turn away away from the wash. So as seen from the top of the tail hub, it should be counterclockwise. And next we're going to go ahead and adjust our tail belt tension here. To adjust the tail belt tension, what we need to do is we're going to pull on the whole tail case, and we're going to tighten these two and these two. And when you tighten the belt, you want to make it tight, but you don't want to make it super tight. It's just more of a common sense type of thing. Don't overdo it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull back on this and tighten it. So I'm going to tighten one bolt first here on one side, and I'm going to feel the belt, and that feels pretty good. Then I'm going to tighten another bolt. Like right about here. And feel the tail belt. And that is pretty good right there. It's not too tight and it's not too loose. That's exactly where it need to be. If it's too tight, nothing's going to happen. You're just going to be robbing a little bit of power, but it's unnoticeable. If it's too loose, it could be dangerous because you're going to lose tail authority, and it could be eventually slapping and hitting the boom inside, and that's something that you definitely want to avoid at all costs. The next and final thing is to make sure that before I go ahead and tighten the tail belt all the way, we want to make sure that the tail case all the way, we want to make sure that the tail is square. In other words, as you look at this, you can actually manipulate this a little bit. Even though we have some standoffs and some spacers right here, if you pull to one side or the other side, the tail might end up being a little off. You want to make sure that you have a perfect 90-degree angle from the tail belt to the tail output shaft. So make sure that's the case. You don't want the tail case to be crooked. So I already checked mine and it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten the rest of the bolts here. So I got to tighten that one and that one. And as you remember from before, when I built the tail case, I didn't tighten the bolts that hold the spacers all the way, and I didn't want to tighten them because I was waiting to insert the tail case onto the boom, because it makes it easier when you don't tighten them all the way. So now that I've tightened the 4 bolts that hold the tail case to the tail boom itself, and everything's set, and my tail belt tension is set and everything, now I'm going to go ahead and proceed to tighten these 6 bolts, 3 on each side. Okay, that's all set. So we're going to go ahead and proceed to install the tail blades now. And to install the tail blades, we're going to have to reach into bag 10. Bag 10-1 has the shims for the head for the main blades, the bolts for the main blades, and it has the bolts for the tail blades as well. Okay, we're almost completely done with the build, and so here's our 500, and I'm just going to go over a couple extra little things before we wrap this up. At this point, you pretty much are ready to start putting your batteries on the battery trays. And if you go to bag number 8 right here is going to have 2 battery trays. Here they are, and it's going to have some Velcro, and you're going to have here also your canopy grommets and the foam, the canopy adhesive foam that we put on the canopy. So basically the way you install the batteries is you want to, I personally on the manual it says to use either double-sided tape or I believe Velcro. I like double-sided tape, so I take my battery and I put double-sided tape on the tray, then I put my battery on the tray, and then I wrap the Velcro around the battery. And obviously remember, these slots are to run the Velcro this way. You cannot run the Velcro this way because then this would not go into the helicopter. So put your battery, put your Velcro this way, and insert it like this into the helicopter. When you do that, before you do that, and presuming, imagine, let's say that the helicopter was practically built right now. The first thing you want to do is before you install the battery on the battery trays, you want to insert your battery tray on the helicopter. And then put your battery there, and then check your CG. Make sure your CG is right on before you commit to the mounting position for the battery. Otherwise, you might have a tail heavy or a nose heavy helicopter. So make sure the machine is ready. You already did your fiberless setup. You already did everything. And at this point, you're just going to check your CG with the battery on, and then put a little mark with a Sharpie, and then remove the battery tray, and then mount the battery onto the tray. Another thing that's important to keep in mind here is be careful when you use the release mechanism here. This is pretty strong, but but it's not meant to be pulled really hard on. When you insert your battery, you just literally put the tray and it'll fall in place. Actually, that's a very nice snug fit. When you're going to remove the battery, you got to pull on this and just pull on the tray. But again, when you pull on this, be careful, because this is part of your frame. If you pull too hard on this, you're going to break the frame. I've never broken a frame before, but one of the guys at the factory, just the other day, we were together and he pulled on this so hard that he actually cracked the frame. So you just got to keep that in mind. Nothing wrong with it, just got to keep that in mind. So that's what we have for the batteries, the battery trays. And then after that, you're just ready to finish your canopy. The first thing is we're going to insert the canopy grommets. Canopy grommets on the canopy. And then we're going to go ahead and put the foam right here, the adhesive foam. Now the grommets should go in the canopy very easily, and the canopy hole should be at the right dimension. I personally don't use CA on these. Just don't like to use CA. They don't need CA. I've never had one of them fail on me or deteriorate. Back in the nitro days, it was almost necessary to use CA, but with the electrics and the lack of vibration and nitro, there's no need. So put the grommets in, and then we're going to go ahead and put this around the canopy. According to the manual, it says that you have to put it all the way from here, all the way to here and here. Now let me tell you something. The critical area is literally from here to about here, and that's all I like to use. And this is just mainly to protect your boom, because with vibration this is going to rub up against the boom and it's going to chip the paint away. So when you install this, just make sure that you install it really well all the way at the very end of the canopy, so that there's no chance that the actual fiberglass on the canopy can hit your boom. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this while I speed up the video and mount it real quick. Okay, I got this done, and as you can see, I didn't go all the way down. I just went to about here, which is fine. Again, this is mostly to protect the boom, so it doesn't really serve much of a purpose up front. So this is the critical area. Make sure this is mounted nice and neat, because you do not want your boom to get scratched just by flying, and it will if this is not in place. So we're done with our canopy, and then as we go over to basically the last page is just simply telling you to install your serial number. Now I want to talk about this very briefly. Bag 9 has your serial number tag. It's right here. This is a very important bag. Basically your serial number is unique. It belongs to you. This means that you bought your own Goblin and you bought it from us and from a legitimate source. And basically with this serial number you can get support from us. Even though we encourage our distributors and our dealers to support you, the end user, we actually will keep track of your Goblin, and we will let you know if there's anything that you need to be aware of. For example, if there's a recall on a part, if we determine that there's an issue, anything, we will let you know about it. So we cannot be held responsible if you do not register your Goblin, because we would not be able to communicate with you when it comes to important stuff. And we're not going to use your email address to spam or anything like that. We're not going to be contacting you with random things. We're just only going to contact you if we need to let you know about a potential issue with your kit. Hopefully we won't have any issues, but in the past with the 700 we addressed some issues immediately, and we were relying on our distributors to let the customers know. This time around, and with any other kit, even with the 700, if you have a 700, go ahead and register online. So with this, you go to goblin-helicopter.com and you register your Goblin online and enter your serial number. And if you have another model, it's not a 500, but say a 700 or a 770 or a 630, you still can register without a serial number. So anyway, take this serial number and mount it here on your helicopter, and that'll just show everybody that you bought this, again, from a legitimate source, you have a warranty on it, or that you have support from us on this model. Okay, we have our serial number there, so we're pretty much all set. So that is pretty much the build. I'm going to go ahead and mount the canopy on this for now, and gonna go ahead and leave the servos here. I will finish this build some other time. But as you can see, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and this helicopter is almost ready, with the exception of the ESC and the tail servo, and obviously the setup. Normally it takes me about 4 hours to have one of these completely ready to fly from a box. But obviously we've had some slow goings here simply because I've been pausing and explaining certain things, and I've been taking it really easy. Plus I've been kind of helping myself with the manual a little bit as well. So I'm just going to put the canopy on here, and then after that it's just time to go ahead and put your blades, and again your blade bolts and your blade nuts along with the blade shims that you're going to need are on the same bag, 10-1, which is the bag that you use to find the bolts for the tail blades as well. So go ahead and finish this by putting the blades, and there you have it, the Goblin 500. And there you have it, guys, the Goblin 500. This was actually a 3.5 hour build. The only 3 things I did not do was I did not install the flybbarless system, did not install a tail servo or a speed controller. But other than that, from this point on, it's pretty self-explanatory. It usually takes me about 4 hours to build one of these from being in the box to being ready to fly. Of course, what's left might take a little more than a half an hour, but you know, obviously I was speaking and trying to focus on the video and explaining the best I could the whole build. Generally you can work much faster than that if you were working at your own pace. As for the actual electronics placement, as I explained before, lots of different possibilities with the 500. I promised you that I would show you some of my 500s that were done, and here, as you can see, for example, is my my other red and white Goblin 500. As you can see, the servo wires are tucked nice and neat under the flybbarless mounting plate, and they're tucked away. It looks pretty clean. And then as you can see down below on this model, I have a Contronic ESC with a Super Hercules BEC from Western Robotics pushing 8.4 volts, and torque tail servo, and also the wires from the tail servo as well as the speed controller are nicely run inside the frames and held by some zip ties. On this other helicopter, the yellow one, I have a Castle Creations Talon, and I have a Scorpion backup guard supplying backup power to the flybbarless system in case I have an issue with the BEC that's built into the Talon. So lots of different mounting possibilities on the electronics, lots of options, but I hope this kind of gives you an idea as to how you can go about installing your specific electronics. So I hope you enjoy this build video. I hope it was useful, and I'll see you guys next time.